All right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be in this beautiful world. And welcome to episode number 16 of the Steel City Insider podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Jeremy Hritz, alongside Jim Wexell of the Steel City Insider. And we're excited to be with you. Yes, it was a stinker, the terrible, terrible loss to the Kansas City Chiefs, but we're going to walk you and talk you through it and help you get through these post Kansas City Chiefs loss blues. So Jim, how you doing this fine morning, and how were your holidays?
Holidays were really good, really good. It's nice because you go into them with low expectations. That's when you have great ones. So it was really nice. And I told you about the Chiefs, man. Don't even watch this game, I said.
It was bad. It was bad. Continued poor play of the offensive line, ineptitude of the play calling. Adrian Clem did leave, so maybe we'll see a slight improvement with Chris Morgan, assuming offensive line coach duties here in these last two games. Just really a flat out uninspired game overall. And we're going to get into all that. But Jim, I have something new to try today. And being that the Steelers can't score at all, I was going to call this the opening touchdown or the opening score, but I went with something a bit modest, and we're going to call this the opening 3 points, the opening field goal. And it's 3 points that came after this weekend's game. And wherever it takes us in conversation, we're just going to go with the flow here. So I've got three of them for you. The first one is a quote from Rocky Bleier. He says, and this is after the game, embarrassing. So why do we continue fooling ourselves just thinking this team is something special? Why did we think this team could get into the playoffs? Second one is from Ed Bichette, who commented on the CBS stat on his Twitter. CBS comes up with incredible stats. Steelers have been held without first half TD for 5 consecutive games for the first time since 1940. And then the third one is a stat about Najee Harris, who was one of the guys that was a bright spot in the game, not because of his output, but just because of his overall just effort. But Najee has 268 carries for 984 yards, 67 receptions for 422 yards, which is a rookie record. And Franco tallied 1,055 yards his rookie season. So Harris is close to touching that. So something positive there. So that's opening three. Which way do you want to go?
Let's go one by one. Rocky, he wants to know why we have these expectations. Why do you? Why are you putting this all on us? You played for the 1969 Steelers who went 1-13. This team's doing better than that. You know what it's like to have to totally rebuild. I don't know where you can walk me through this, but the owner wanted the quarterback back. And it's funny that Tomlin got an extra year added onto his contract after that. It's like, let's just see how this goes before you not totally rebuild. This team's never going to totally rebuild. This isn't Chuck Noll coming in 69, looking around and seeing Rocky Bleier, Andy Russell, and 51 guys he's going to cut. So nobody cared about that team. So, I don't understand Rocky's enragement anyway. They're walk me through this. I don't know where I want to go with this. We want to go on Rocky. Do we want to move to Bichette?
We can move to Bichette.
Talk about how bad this team is and how surprisingly it is 7-7-1.
Yeah. I think with the Bleier comment there, I don't know that people were assuming that this team was going to make it into the playoffs or was something special. I think at least you and I have been acknowledging that this is a team with warts that's probably below average, but they're finding ways to win. So I guess there's a faction out there that thinks that this team is special.
No, well, they must be angry because they must think they're underachieving. Our mistake was thinking that you could rebuild an offensive line from scratch. Yeah. Totally. Just because you have Chukes Okorafor? You kidding me? And then you bring in a new coach, and this coach leaves for a college team, and the Steelers say, go now.
Yeah.
And Chris Morgan's been up in the press box anyway with the offensive coordinator. Chris Morgan may have been running this all along. there may be dysfunction there to begin with. Remember when who was the offensive line coach? Bicknell. They said the assistant had to take over the meeting. Sarrett had to, this was before Munchak got hired. They said he had to take over the meeting because the O-line coach knew nothing. So maybe it's a case of that. Maybe he has to go to college to do better. Maybe, and the Steelers are being accused of being cheap because Oregon is paying twice as much for a bad O-line coach. Were the Steelers supposed to pay more for this guy? I mean, let him go. It's not working. This shows the dysfunction. I don't know that it shows embarrassment. People are saying, wow, this is a bad look for the Steelers with the O-line coach leaving for college. You really don't know the dynamics behind it. Maybe the team realized that his assistant, Chris Morgan, who coached the Atlanta Falcons line when they were in the Super Bowl, knows a little more about O-line, and they began deferring to him, and maybe Clem felt lost. And, this is just a reaction to what he already knew, what the team's already known. We as fans and media don't really know that Clem was on the outside and looking for a college place to go crash. So, I don't know why we thought an O-line coach could just be built like that, or an O-line offensive line. It's not. We had such high expectations for Kendrick Green. That was a mistake on our part. I mean, it looks like it's our fault. I know the team has not rebuilt the offensive line properly, but I was as excited about Kendrick Green. I didn't see him in college. I had that book to finish, so I deferred to my draft guys. They all loved Kendrick Green, loved him. I watched Creed Humphrey one time, and I said, this is the guy. This guy's polished. He looks like a Steelers center. And they passed on him in the second round because they knew they had Kendrick Green in their back pocket. Well, it's just not working out.
Yeah.
And I don't know that not drafting Freiermuth was the move to make. I don't know. Creed Humphrey's a good ball player, good center.
Yeah.
So they missed there, but they got a left tackle. They've got a sixth man, and Dotson's coming back. So there are some pieces, but it's taken time, just like every other process has taken the Steelers over the years. If you look back at history, maybe go back to 1940, and that could be our segue to Bouchette's comment.
Yeah, which is very, very interesting. And that stat being the Steelers held without a first half TD for 5 consecutive games for the first time since 1940. Wow.
No, what else can you say?
That's bad. That's bad.
You know my opinion about Roethlisberger being an adrenaline junkie.
I thought of you this weekend when that happened. I'm like, all right, this is setting up perfectly for Jim's theory about Ben being on the edge. And then I'm like, all right, I'm waiting for it.
He's not on the edge. It's 0-0. He's not on the edge. And hey, I could be full of it with all this, but it's just part of it, I think, that nobody's even mentioning. Everybody just wants to knee jerk right to the coaches. Look at this poor preparation. There might be something to it. They ran that stupid sweep, that toss to the right side on the first play. It's the same play they ran on 4th and 1. Someone made a great point. It was 3rd and 4, and they threw for 3 yards. They threw behind the stick. So on 4th and 1, they tossed it even further behind the stick. It's what they do. Oh, the 4th and 1 is too close. We better throw this back further. And they got Chooks pulling, and Melvin Ingram, the Tomlin described run game bully, shut that play down. It was the biggest play of the game for the Steelers. It's an embarrassment. So there's their poor planning, but I mean, Roethlisberger came back and threw that beautiful 18-yard pass to DJ on the right sideline. Seemed to get him going. It wasn't a beautiful pass. It was a beautiful catch. And they just they can't run the ball at all. And Roethlisberger doesn't trust that O-line. You could see he even had time, and he was skipping balls because he felt like he was going to get hit.
Yeah.
Just ugly.
Yeah, the flea flicker was a bit questionable too. And it looked like as soon as Ben took that, the toss back from Harris, that there was a guy on him. But that was like, I think I read somewhere, I didn't look at this on the film, but all the routes were 15 yards or shorter. I don't know if you confirmed that or if you saw it when you watched that play, but that
You
was,
know, we have a great coach, breaks down tape, all 22, and I always defer to him with something like that, and that'll come out tomorrow at our site. What bugs me most about that isn't the routes. It's the actually doing a flea flicker with that offensive line. And Ben, Ben was nervous and wanted to get rid of that ball as quick as possible because, handing off and then the running back pitching back is time consuming for that offensive line.
Yeah.
And you just can't trust it to do things like that.
Yeah. I saw that happen. I was like, oh man, this is not good. And thankfully he didn't take a shot there. It did end up, but he lives to fight another day. I did think it was telling, speaking of Ben, to see his entire family there up in one of the boxes. I think that's probably greater credence to the fact that next week will be his final game at Heinz Field. And they were also talking to the commentators, Romo and Nance, about that Ben had invited some former Steelers legends to come to the game Monday night. I don't know if you heard that, but this potentially could be it. Probably not potentially. I think after Sunday, if he was thinking anything about coming back for one more season, I think that may have been the nail in the coffin.
Yeah, he's not coming back. I think that was clear early in the year. And then when the national report came out, he did not deny it. And no, just what you said.
Yeah.
Mason went in, showed that he could run. I think that's all anybody wants to see, a quarterback that can move a little bit. Yeah, it's sad, but it's, a game like that can be cathartic because you finally blow all that out and you say, it is time to totally redo this and show patience. Next season when Mason is quarterbacking and another piece in the offensive line is added and the defense starts playing a little better with Tuitt back and Alu. The team will be better, but there won't be those expectations. Mm-hmm. And you don't have to fire everybody after a bad game. And so that's cathartic in a way.
Yeah.
That game, this past game, and I did not get on social media at all. I knew what was coming, and it happened. And I did take a peek the other day, yesterday at social media, and I saw Tomlin was trending, and I was not going to open that.
It's pretty bad.
People just hate him. They just hate him. I don't know. Just because you have been for the last 10 years does not mean you have a good team.
Yeah.
A Super Bowl team. So
I like your point there about that loss being cathartic in a way, because all along they're fighting, they're trying to stay in the mix for the postseason, and maybe they had their hopes up for a North title, wild card berth. But it's almost like we've used this term on here before: surrendering to the inevitable of what's coming and what is. And what is this is it's a rebuild, or not even a rebuild, a retooling, I guess is the more appropriate term.
A restocking, and it will be good to lose a little bit and get some high draft picks, but that defense, Tony Romo at one point said they're getting 6-7 yards anytime they want it. Yes, that's how it's been all year. That run defense is historically bad. And I know everybody's been looking at the offensive line. They can't run the ball or stop the run. That's just disastrous, no matter who you have at quarterback. And the Chiefs only got 3.6 per carry, and the Steelers lowered their NFL worst per carry average under 5. They're at 4.8, which is, they haven't been that low since 1954. I know it's not Ed Bouchette's 1940, but it's 1954. They were in the 1934 realm before at 5.0.
Wow.
It's just a historically bad run defense. And the fact that they actually held Kansas City a bit, I think, speaks to Robert Spillane and maybe even Isaiah Loudermilk. I'm continually impressed by Loudermilk at the point of attack.
Yeah. I was just going to comment on Loudermilk. I thought he played well. I thought there was a noticeable difference with him in there than some of the other guys. I know Mondo still got some snaps on the defensive line, but Loudermilk may end up being a player.
I know, he shows some Aaron Smith stuff against the run. He holds that point. He stands people up. And now don't quote me on the Aaron Smith thing. It's a long way to be Aaron Smith, but you see some of that. You can see why they traded up for him. A big body. He's an NFL body, real, and that's what you liked about Taco Charlton the first day he came into camp. That's why Ingram left, because Charlton, and you can see Charlton's doing just as much as Ingram's doing for the Chiefs.
Yeah. Yep. And that's with some of these guys. I mentioned this on last week's podcast too. The experience that these younger defensive linemen are getting, coupled with an off-season program, more coaching, not that they're going to drastically improve, but they should have better depth should they stay healthy next year on that defensive line. So something promising, a silver lining in the historically bad rushing defense.
It's hideous. But it also, the bigger problem is Devin Bush. You traded up a lot to go get him, and it doesn't look like an NFL inside linebacker.
Yeah.
And they take him out on the dime, so he's really not a coverage guy either.
Yeah, you can't miss on a 10th overall pick like that.
I know. Look at that Baltimore linebacker, Queen.
Yeah.
He's a shorter guy, but he blows things up. He is very tough and aggressive. You need that inside. I don't know what he's like in pass coverage. I really haven't studied him.
Mm-hmm.
That's the kind of linebacker. He wasn't even a first round pick.
Mm-hmm.
But man, when you move up to 10, that's Luke Kuechly range. That's Ray Lewis. That's Mike Singletary. Not that they were taken that high, but that's what you expect. Not a little guy that can buzz the flats and run sideline to sideline, but is too short to cover tight ends. Come on.
It was almost
that's a problem. That's a problem next year. What do you do with him?
That was a reach pick, and I feel like that happens from time to time.
Reach. They traded up. Reach is like grabbing someone who doesn't belong up there. I mean, they went up and got him. It's just
that reminds me of Terrell Edmonds too. I mean, it's a guy that probably would have been available later on. I guess they overestimated the talent that he would bring to the team.
It's not that bad. Terrell Edmonds at least has the size to belong at the bottom of the first round,
mm-hmm.
and is showing that he can play in the NFL. I mean, you would rather have Darius Leonard than you wouldn't have had to take Devin Bush the next year.
Yeah, I'd love to have that guy. The third point I had here, Jim, was Najee Harris. So one bright spot, and again, not because he changed the complexion of the game or had a big statistical showing, but he continues to show a lot of heart, no quit, just hustle and effort. But he's closing in on Franco's rookie rushing record. Now he has several more carries than Harris did. So, I mean, let's put that out there. But he's also running behind a dreadful offensive line.
I mean, there's no comparison between the two, right? I mean, Franco got his yardage in big games with everybody keying on him, and he had a 14-game season.
Right.
I'm not sure how many games he played, but it was a 14-game season. So Najee's assault on any of his records is over, in my opinion, because 14 games are done. I don't think there's any comparison. I'm not seeing it from Najee yet. I'll be patient, give him another year, of course. Le'Veon Bell didn't really show all that much as a rookie either. And Najee looks a little tight when he gets out in the open field. Sometimes he just falls down. Mm-hmm. And he really hasn't breaking him. You'd like to see him break one for 40, 50, a first round pick like that. There's a lot to like, but I'm not totally enamored. You want to talk about him? I did write about him. That was my feature for Steelers Digest. Bob Labriola and I were trying to find a bright spot. And Najee was on the TV with the reporters, and I said, all right, let's do him. He's at least I got some quotes. My tape recorder's running, so he's okay.
Yeah, and he
Nothing I'm in love with yet. I love his attitude, but let me say this: if I were advising him, stop with the cutie pie stuff, and get him off of the weekly press conferences every Friday. He sits there and he answers all these feminine type questions with femininity. He's a nice guy. You could tell he was raised by a mom. He needs to stop all that. Snap at one of us. Seriously, tell us it was a stupid question. Don't get all cute. Don't get cute and that's minor, but I think it speaks to something about his personality. Great character, great guy. I don't know if he's an alpha warrior yet. I don't know.
Well, I had a different perspective there. I thought he did show a lot of heart there. The leap over the player, just put it.
Wait a minute. Why are we leaping over a player moving laterally?
He even though the game's out of hand, he's still going 100, 120.
Yeah, but that was silly. He was moving laterally and he leaped some. But I mean, he's lucky that he didn't get tore up on that.
That's true.
I mean, his main parts get torn up. That was just a little spectacle that I don't think we needed. Yeah.
I think if he has an improved offensive line, I think he'll do much better next year. I'm looking forward to his second season. Definitely
more confidence. Yeah.
So, all right. Well, those are the opening. That was the opening field goal, the 3 points, just something to try there. We got 3 points on the board, and we'll kind of shift into some of the pieces that we didn't hit on yet. So we did talk a little bit about the offensive line, just digging into that a little bit more. Curiously enough, Kendrick Green and Trey Turner in the fourth quarter had injuries. They're my air quotes showing up again this week. Was it truly injuries that kept them off the field? Was it the poor play that finally caught up with them? And that's Tomlin's way of saving face for these players. Do you think that maybe they get sat down against the Browns and Hosnauer gets to start at center and maybe they put the general in for Turner?
Well, the general has to play as few snaps as possible to get that comp.
Right.
I don't know where he stands mathematically with that. Kendrick Green, Tomlin was pressed. Was he injured or did he stink? Tomlin said he was injured. So, I mean, that's good of a coach to protect players like that. There's no sense mocking them for the world, and unless you're really ticked off at him. And so apparently he's not ticked off at Kendrick Green yet.
Yeah.
So I can't answer that. And Hassenauer might be a nice backup. I don't see him as a starter. I see Kendrick Green as still having potential for that. I know he needs to get stronger and work on his leverage. But that's always possible. It always happens in the NFL. They get a lot stronger in their second year.
Yeah, definitely has the athleticism. If he could just develop those components of his game this offseason, hopefully there's a chance with him. And part of that is coaching. And we talked briefly about Chris Morgan assuming, offensive line coaching duties here. What do they do this offseason? Is there a chance? And taking a look at Matt Canada, he hasn't been great. He hasn't been good. Hasn't been average this year. Probably. Yeah. There you go. You tell it like it is. But I don't think he's coming back. Is there any chance that they can make a run at Munchak and bringing him in as an offensive coordinator and have him coach the offensive line? Because I know that it's not looking too stable, the situation in Denver. I know he was moved out there because of family. Is there any chance of a reunion there?
I think so. Both sides parted amicably. There was a lot of respect from both sides. He's a Pennsylvania guy. His daughter is in Colorado. So we don't know that angle, how fulfilling it would be for him to retire there. He probably could. And you bring up a good point, offensive coordinator. It's funny, O-line coaches, I asked Bill Cowher this one time about why O-line coaches don't become offensive coordinators. And he said, he prefaced his answer, and I can't even remember his answer, but he prefaced it with, I'm sure you've done your homework on that, but in this case, we're not going to make Russ our offensive coordinator, blah, blah, blah. They become assistant head coaches, and they just remain as offensive coordinator and run game offensive line coach and run game coordinator. For whatever reason, the pass game eludes their mental grasp, I guess. I don't know. But I'd love to see Munchak here, no matter what title you want to give him. I'd love to see it. That would really spark enthusiasm in the fan base. I'll tell you that, because I don't know how much the owner had to do with guys like Matt Canada, Ben Roethlisberger, things like that. So only the owner can do a deep dive on his own conscience and decide whether he's interfered too much already or whether he hasn't. I'm unsure. Things I hear, though.
Yeah. Do you think there's any chance that Canada gets let go before these final 2 games?
Oh, no. That O-line coach thing was an aberration. Like I said, there must have been some drag going on through the year that maybe Chris Morgan was getting more of the say and more of the power. And it was, go ahead, go look for something else. But they're not going to do that with an offensive coordinator. No, that's not what they do.
Now, on the opposite side of the ball, Keith Butler, do you think that his position's in jeopardy? And I know that the speculation, and maybe you have confirmation of this, that Tomlin is the one who's always calling the defense, but do you see Butler returning, or do you see potential?
It's not speculation. I'm sorry. I keep cutting you off. I get excited. It's not speculation. I mean, this is a coach who was a defensive coordinator with the Minnesota Vikings before he came here. Of course, it's his defense. He deferred Dick LeBeau because it was an act of respect. It was a young guy deferring, showing maturity, and the team loved Dick LeBeau. The team was already set. The defense was already set. So the defensive coach stood back. But after a while, when it became apparent that the fire zones weren't working like they did in the old days, that they couldn't beat New England with this setup, that Tomlin wanted to install his defense and do it his way, more hybrids, and you're seeing it, whether it's good or bad. But, Keith Butler, you could see Keith Butler calls the defenses on the side, whether, Tomlin's overriding everything, only they know. But of course, Tomlin's been calling all that. I don't know why this has become news. I don't understand this. Now, Keith Butler is a good outside linebackers coach on a team that thrives with its outside linebackers. I don't know if they just want to throw him away because the owner feels a need to show the fan base that he's doing something. So I don't know that Butler's in any danger. Tomlin's the only one putting himself in danger there. Apparently, it's not enough, and obviously, we can see the defensive line problems with the injuries.
Yeah, could it be something Rooney inserts himself and says, "Hey, Mike, look, you're the head coach. You got to manage the global operation here. You're done with your defensive play calling duties. You got to bring somebody in. You got to give up. You got to give up the control."
Defensive play duties. He's the head coach. It's not duties. This is his defense.
I get it, but
if you want to fire him as the coach, you got to do that. Now you're opening up a whole other can of worms. Well, you like him in the facility. You like a lot of things about him. You don't like his defensive play calling. I don't know if it's play calling as much as it's talent right now. Mm-hmm. And somebody's got to answer to drafting Devin Bush.
Mm-hmm. Maybe.
And Stephon Tuitt's got to answer too.
Yeah.
I mean,
there's a good questions for the post end of the season press conference for Tom.
Yeah, and nobody's going to talk about Tuitt. Yeah. Mental health is something totally different, and they keep saying it's something we should talk about, but when that guy doesn't want to talk about it, you can't make him.
Yeah. Well, they're 7.
Sorry, I didn't mean to be such a drag, man.
Hey, it's all good. That's it. It's all good. This is good, healthy discussion. But we obviously know that there's got to be changes coming up after the season. 2 more games to go. Hopefully Ben can go out a winner, and brings us to the question we always hit on at the end of each show: where from here? What's the best case scenario for this team? Can they win two to send Ben out a winner? It's a near impossibility for them to make the playoffs. They're going to have to depend on help from others. Don't think that's going to happen. But where do they go from here, Jim?
Oh, they just play it one game at a time and then move on. And, it'll be start one day at a time, improve your team just as they always do, patiently. And, that one day, the first day, you will decide on your coaches. I think that's first priority.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's any question about Ben. And right now, Mason Rudolph is your quarterback. And where do you go from there? And frankly, the drafting of offensive linemen that everybody believes is imminent. I don't believe this team should consider themselves there. That's the difference between a rebuild and a retool, is where you consider yourself. Do you say, you know what, this wide receiver right here is a Hall of Fame wide receiver looking at us in the draft, but we have Deontay Johnson, but we have Chase Claypool. Do you do that and draft a center because you think you need that position? Or do you draft the Hall of Famer? You draft Hall of Famers because you've already got Minka, TJ, and Cam. Cam's still very viable. Najee. You've got some pillars. You need more pillars. You need more Hall of Famers, and that's what you got to do. Stop thinking about the positions you need and start thinking about the Hall of Famers that you need for 5 years down the road.
Yeah. And there will be some guys available through free agency who could come in and start on that offensive line. So maybe they'll take that angle, but we'll definitely be getting into that and more once we get to the offseason in terms of the draft and free agency. I love the season, but I also love the offseason. So a lot of exciting stuff that will be coming your way on the podcast here. So make sure that you check in once this season is over, because we won't be done. We'll be going on here. But Jim, it is time for another edition of the Terrible Three to close out the show. Are you ready?
Yeah, I don't think you put them on the agenda. I really don't know what's coming this time.
Jesus, here we go. The first one is Juju. He was on a promo on the Steelers website and they asked him what he wanted for Christmas. And he said he wanted a 4-year deal with the Steelers. Will the Steelers give it to him, and will he return next season?
Well, it's always about how much. I don't know. I mean, what they need more is deep speed. I do like his toughness, and it's kind of lacking right now on 3rd and 6. And he's good for that. It depends on what the cost is. I like him as a person and a player. Others don't. I think the Steelers like him. I think likes him. A yes or no? Man, 4 years. I'm just going to guess no. But I'm not in the camp that thinks that he's got to go because he dances on TikTok.
Yeah, I'd like to see them re-sign him, especially if they can get him on the cheap after his injury. But
I'd like to see him work more on his speed than on his muscle.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's packed on too much muscle because of what they've asked him to do on 3rd and 6. But I like those 297-yard touchdown passes he's caught in his career. Where'd that speed go? That's what I want back. Stop packing on the muscle.
Yeah, he is a
feedback
guy for wide receiver.
Mm-hmm.
So, but hopefully they get a deal done with him. I'd like him to be back. He's only 26 years old too, so there's.
I don't know that it's a big priority though.
Mm-hmm. It gives you some stability there at the wide receiver room because Ray ain't getting.
Ray had a bad game, but Ray had been playing well. I don't understand the angst about throwing to Ray. It seemed like every other question in the press conference was about Ray getting a lot of passes. Mm-hmm. I thought he's played 4 or 5 good games in a row, and I don't think he was undeserving, but there are some things to like about him. He didn't have a good game this time, but
yeah. All right, the next one, new offensive coordinator, new defensive coordinator, or both this offseason.
Man, what if there's neither?
Oh, jeez.
I've explained the Butler thing. I have no problem keeping him. It's, Tomlin's got to do some soul searching, look inside. What does he really want in his defense? I mean, it's not going to kill you to have a couple fat guys. Really, it's not. You don't need a hybrid at nose tackle. I'll say Canada. You know, they like to let guys finish their 2 years at a job. And if this was the owner's choice, I don't know that the owner is going to want to back out of it right away. And you know, the guy is going to make his case. I need a better O-line. I need a more mobile quarterback for my style. Somebody told me this. He reminds him of Joe Walton. We're going to run my offense, whether I got the pieces or not. And so, yeah, nobody wants to see Joe Walton again at running the offense. But so I'll just say Canada will be replaced and not Butler.
All right. And then the final one is, we sit here today, do the Steelers target 2 offensive linemen with their first 2 picks in this upcoming draft, or do they go after a quarterback and an offensive lineman?
Well, okay, you did have this on the agenda. So that was where I went earlier when I said just draft Hall of Famers. Really, draft the best athlete, unless it's a running back. Really, I'd hate to pass on Gale Sayers because you have Najee Harris, but I think you're okay there in the first round. Any other position, wide open, except safety again. You know, really, you don't need to restock that. Safety and running back, I think, are off limits. But man, everything else, any other position, I don't know the 2 offensive linemen is the answer. Hey, get a David DeCastro. You know, a David DeCastro, guys like that come in the locker room and they have presence right away. And then for the next 4 or 5 years, you've got a policeman in there. You've got a guy that, Dave DeCastro was a guy we went to when things were getting sloppy and you wanted to ask him, what's practice like? Are you satisfied? Is everybody working here? And he would give honest commentary. If he didn't like how hard people were working, he'd comment. That's the kind of policeman you want out of your offensive line. So that's the kind of guy I'll take in a minute. So they really do need one of those guys and a guy on the defensive line to do that. You know, I don't know how long Cam can last. This season's got to be taking a toll on Cam.
Yeah, I think he'll be 33 at the start of next season. So, and eventually his game's going to start to tail off. It happens to everybody. Let's hope that it doesn't. But we're going to be covering that and more as we go into the offseason. But before we get there, we have 2 games left to play. Monday night against the Browns at home, and what probably is Roethlisberger's final game at Heinz Field. Let's hope he throws for 500 yards and 5 touchdowns. That would be beautiful.
Yeah.
But we'll have to see. And then he's going to finish it up in Baltimore. But as always, we appreciate you joining us here today for the podcast. Please continue to share with your family and friends and help us spread the message of the Steel City Insider podcast. You can check out Jim's work on the Steel City Insider and give him a follow at Jim Wexell. You can check out my work at thesteelstudy.com and give me a follow on Twitter at SteelStudy. And we hope you have an amazing New Year's. And what do you think, Wednesday next week, Jim? Because it's Monday nighter.
Oh, man. I forgot about that.
Yeah,
I'm not going to miss these 5 a.m. podcasts, brother. I guess Wednesday, yes.
All right.
Okay.
I
hope I wasn't too sour today.
It's all good. It's all good. We will see you in the new year, the first episode of 2022 next Wednesday, January 5th. And in the meantime, in between time, have a great New Year's, and we'll see you back here on the Steel City Insider podcast. Take care, everyone.
Happy New Year.